Well, it's now time to turn our attention over to the grain markets. On Wednesday afternoon, we were joined in the studio by Heartland Farm Partners President Jeff Peterson. As we look at the charts, the latest activity, particularly when it comes to corn and soybeans, it's been a downward trend. And it's a bit of a surprise to some people, as typically this time of year, Jeff, we see a bit of a sideways, maybe even a little bit of a bump when it comes to prices of corn and soybeans. What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. That's a question that we're getting asked every day. And let's just go back in time and kind of look at this a little bit, Bryce. If you look at it, it really started back on April 12th, but it started with crude oil. And since April 12th all the way down to May 4th, crude oil dropped $20 a barrel. And when you have that type of headwind and pressure on the market, since part of the value for what corn is worth and soybeans is worth is made up of energy, that put pressure on that market. But then we started to see the markets pull back on corn and soybeans starting about April 18th. And hard to believe since that time, we'd ended up seeing corn pull back about 78 cents. We ended up beans pull back about $1.08. But then we had a nice little rebound and corn came up about 31 and beans came up at 55. But then they ran into a lot of selling. And what happened in amongst all that, we have to think about this, Bryce, is the funds, the trend following funds, the big money, they've been continuing to sell off some of their bean position. They've been continuing to sell off and get short on the corn side. So that put market pressure in. And then we thought we were in pretty good shape on export demand on corn, but then we've seen about 32 million bushels worth of cancellations out of China. Now, I don't think that's so much out of China that the fact that they physically don't need bushels. It's just they found a better deal, I think, coming out of South America later on. And then we've also had some pretty good planting weather. Over that time for a while, we thought, well, there's going to be problems up in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota. Well, that snow got melted off pretty fast. Now they're still behind on planting, but planting pace is picking up, and now it looks like we got some showers out there coming into certain areas. Now, not everybody's got enough rain, but there's been enough there that the market actually kind of feels like it thinks this crop is made, and I think it's a little bit too early to take that type of tone.
Going back to the Chinese and what we're seeing there with them canceling some of those cargo ships, I feel like it comes out, sale announced of X number of bushels to China, then it's tampered expectations, wait for the inspections is what a lot of the analysts will say. I'm sure you've said that to me, Jeff, and then it comes out they've canceled that. Does this happen every year and we just sometimes get short-term memory loss about it?
Oh, it does definitely happen. As a matter of fact, in commercial grain trade, I'll give you an example. You could have a train, you could have a barge, you could have a ship that could get bought and sold multiple times as they're moving along from the time they leave their origin to the destination. So really all that's happening with China is it just so happens it's happening in a very visible area. Now, something I want to clear up, when they say cancel, I don't really like that word really much because it's really that they just offset their contract. And there's a financial consequence to that. If they physically bought it and the market had went up, and now I'm not talking about the futures market, I'm talking about the basis, then when they'd sell it back, they'd make money. But honestly, if the basis goes down on them, then ultimately they could end up losing money and having to pay back some more.
Interesting. I appreciate that tidbit, Jeff. Let's talk about the Ukraine grain corridor. How successful was that when that was first implemented, and share where we're at with that today?
Yeah, actually that has been so successful because here's what's amazing about it. Before this, the war got all started, you'd look at Ukraine, you'd say, you know what, they're the number 4 exporter of corn, they're the number 5 exporter on wheat, they're the number 1 exporter of basically the sunflower oil, and they would have shipped out about 1 billion bushels of corn. Think about that, 1 billion bushels prior to this conflict happening, this war happening. But actually what's been happening, because the corridor was opened up, they've been able to ship out over 800 million bushels of corn, or probably about 850 million bushels. So it's extremely important, not only corn, but it's also important to your veg oils and also to your wheat market also.
Well, share with us a status update, what we know of that deal right now.
Yeah, so as we dig into that right now, what we know is on the 10th and 11th, it looks like they're going to be meeting to talk about the higher levels and decide what it looks like is going to happen. Turkey has been saying they think that it could get extended for another couple months, as we'd expect to hear out of Russia. They're saying that nothing happens unless all the sanctions are removed. In the end, I think that ultimately the corridor will get extended, but I think they may take it right up until the end, or maybe even carry it out past the end of what the expiration would be. And that expiration, depending on who you talk to, sets out there on May 17th and May 18th.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on that. Also keep an eye on weather this time of year, of course, Jeff. El Nino is moving in. Perhaps that weather pattern is going to set in later this summer is what some analysts say where we're at. What kind of implications will it have on the world stage, though?
Well, in the world stage, and actually, so let's start here in the U.S., that should give us some pretty good precip and actually some decent conditions, but there's actually some cold water that's holding off of our west coast that's kind of keeping that from happening. But across the world, we'd have to look and say that can cause some problems with wheat production in Australia. That can cause some problems with not the monsoon in India not coming in soon enough. That can impact their production. It also can impact the Indonesia and Malaysia palm oil production, which is really important right now with everything that's going on because of the renewable diesel and that whole push there.
All right, Jeff, as we begin to wrap up, I want to ask you about old crop and new crop. If you got corn and soybeans sitting around, or old crop, and perhaps you're thinking about marketing new, what suggestions are you making?
You know what, sitting here right today, we need to give this market just a little more time. This isn't a place to panic in here, even though down the road we might have to ride this market going a little lower and then bounce back up. I would just hold it here though, but get your finger on the trigger for that next round of sales.
All right, appreciate the insights. Jeff, as always, thanks for joining us this week.
You bet, always enjoy it.